Congress into bringing down spending in exchange for raising the debt ceiling. Well, it looks like the spending will be cut, but not the way anyone wants it to.
If the sequester is allowed to go forward, thousands of Americans who work in fields like national security, education, or clean energy are likely to be laid off.
I don't like the sequester. I think it's taking a meat axe to our government, a meat axe to many programs, and it will weaken our national defense.
So there you go. Nobody likes it. Okay, but the cuts would amount to this. About $85 billion spread out over 7 months from the beginning of March until September 30th, the end of the fiscal year of 2013. According to the White House, it would take a 13% chunk out of defense budgets and another 9% out of domestic spending. So what's at stake? On the domestic side, it's civilian federal agencies. They would have to chop their budgets by more than 8% across the board. To do it, they'd cut workers and programs. For example, on the education front, over 1 million students could lose Head Start and Title I assistance, Section 8 rental assistance, unemployment benefits, senior meals, homeless programs. They could all be cut. That's on top of possible layoffs at agencies like the FDA, the IRS, and the FBI. Some elements would be off limits, including Social Security, Medicaid, veterans benefits, food stamps, and federal retirement programs. Medicare Part D is exempt, but the rest of Medicare is not. On the military side, outgoing Defense Secretary Leon Panetta warned the cuts could turn the U.S. into a second-rate power. His predecessor, Bob Gates, said it's something he hopes the president addresses in the State of the Union.
I think that clearly I would like to hear something about let's figure out a way to avoid the sequestration on the budget, which I think will be catastrophic.
The military has been positioning itself for months to deal with the big cuts. The DoD is looking at furloughs for civilian employees to save on payroll. It's called for a freeze on all civilian hiring. To slash $18 billion from its budget, the Army plans to trim operations and put off training for 3/4 of its force. To make up a $12.4 billion shortfall, the Air Force will cut flying hours and may shut off some missile defense radar sites. The Navy is preparing to ground the famous Blue Angels later this year. And plans to send the USS Harry Truman to the Gulf, well, they're now on hold. We should mention that the president has said military pay will not be cut and nothing affects any soldiers or any of parts of the war still taking place in Afghanistan. Well, the CBO reports that altogether sequester cuts could slow growth by an additional 1.5% this year, essentially become a drag on the economy until 2017. Joining me now, the former U.S. Comptroller General David Walker. He's also founder and CEO of the Comeback America Initiative. And David, I know your views on what to get done are well known, but this sequester, the whole point of it was to bring both parties together to do something. And now there seems to be resignation in both parties. Well, let it happen. Maybe the consequences won't be so bad. Where are you in this?
Well, Chuck, the reality is that sequester is much more likely to happen because of the failure of the president and the Congress, both political parties, to come together to deal with the structural drivers, to deal with known demographic trends, rising health care costs, an outdated tax system. The truth is we need to focus on the economy, jobs, fiscal responsibility, and intergenerational equity. I think the president needs to step up tomorrow night, provide a framework, follow it up with a responsible budget that bridges the ideological and partisan divides. Because the only way we're going to not have the sequester, in my view, is if there's agreement on a framework that involves much more deficit reduction phased in over a longer period of time.
And it's that phase-in part. I mean, we saw what happened. We had the sort of the blanket cuts that got taken effect in the Budget Control Act of 2011. They took place by the end of 2012, and it actually shrank the American economy. It had the impact, the American economy in the fourth quarter of 2012 technically contracted, did not expand. So does that tell you that we have to be careful on how fast we cut when it comes to government?
Absolutely. The truth is that we need to be making more targeted investments that are properly designed, effectively implemented to get economic growth up in order to be able to help stimulate more employment opportunities. But what we have to do is to agree on changes in social insurance programs, health care costs, comprehensive tax reform that will address our large and growing structural deficits over time, but phase them in. We need to get the power of compounding to start working for us rather than against us as it is today.
Well, you know the divide that takes place. You have certain no more tax increases as far as and no more spending. You have some Republicans that any idea, you called them targeted investments. And there are a bunch of Republicans that say, you know what, no. None of those, all of those are always off the table. So how do you bridge that divide? And you have the president, he's going to call for some of those target investments. He obviously is hesitant to deal a lot on Social Security and Medicare. So, we're in the same place we've been in for 2 years.
Well, the fact is they ought to listen to the American people. I've been to all 50 states doing town hall meetings, business community leaders, college campuses, etc. They're way ahead of elected officials. They know we're in trouble. They want more investment in the short term. They want significant spending reductions over time. They're willing to pay additional taxes if it's done in a fair and equitable fashion, and that should be done through comprehensive tax reform. Only the president is elected by all the people. Only the president is the chief executive officer. Only the president can go directly to the American people, make the case, and then follow it up with a framework, his budget proposal, that provides more meat on it. Right. Tomorrow night is make or break for the president, in my view, with regard to helping us achieve a fiscal grand bargain before 2015.
Well, fiscal grand bargains. Who knows if we'll see them. David Walker, former comptroller.
Good to be with you.
Come Back in America Initiative is your group. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views.